Beyond the issue of affordability, which is of lesser importance in mature economies, there are highly relevant factors, for example, pertaining to psychology and attitudes, the emotional appeal of insurance products, customer experience, trust issues, very soft issues, but highly relevant factors. The second one refers to the economics of the insurance product. Despite the fact that affordability is less of an issue in wealthier countries, people might still conclude that it's better for them, it's more cost efficient for them to retain the risk and not to insure. Then there are institutional peculiarities, for example, in countries that offer high social security, very generous social security benefits. In these countries, we will see less demand for private health insurance. And last but not least, the social and cultural dimension, the socialization of individuals, all this is highly relevant when explaining for differences in risk awareness. So all these factors need to be taken into account in order to understand why people buy less insurance than what seems to be economically beneficial. As long as basic needs such as housing and food are not met, there will be no insurance spending. Another aspect that is of relevance is the regulatory frameworks, the immaturity of frameworks that to some extent make it difficult to ensure customer protection, that generate a certain exposure in these markets to corporate failure and to scandals that might affect the insurance industry as a whole. And last but not least, the economics of offering insurance services in developing countries. In remote rural areas, insurers face relatively very high or even prohibitively high cost to distribute and to the product and to settle the claims. And these costs may cause the market to fail because it's too expensive for the insurer to provide the product, and it is too expensive for the customer to buy the product. Well, one can argue that the health protection gap is a highly subjective matter. It's in the eye of the beholder. For people who are comfortable with government-provided healthcare services, there is probably no major protection gap. On the other hand, there are people who require additional services, which usually have to be funded by social insurance or private health insurance. And then other individuals, and primarily in the wealthier, advanced economies, require even higher levels of coverage, which need to be paid for out of pocket. But even these out-of-pocket expenses are no reliable measure of underinsurance, because in many countries, out-of-pocket expenses are mandated by governments to steer the overall, as co-payments, so-called co-payments, to steer the overall use of medical services. The situation is quite different, however, in developing countries. Here, out-of-pocket expenses matter greatly. In a number of countries, they exceed 50% of total national healthcare expenditures. Not surprising, given the low levels of coverage offered by existing public schemes. And on top of all this, there is another dimension of the health protection gap, which is highly relevant, but almost impossible to quantify. And here I'm talking about undertreatment or non-treatment as a result of a lack of affordability, a lack of access, or even a simple lack of supply in the absence of a minimum medical infrastructure.